This button. Hi guys, welcome to the show. I got Todd sitting in. We're doing the live stream again for those of you out there in Facebook land watching along. It is the 26th of December. We hope everybody had a safe and happy holidays, or are continuing to have happy holidays, given that there are other holidays that are still going on. Todd and I are just going to catch up since last time he was here. He's not on the campaign trail anymore, but he's still very, very active in Knoxville politics, and I really appreciate him for it. He's a good news source for me on some of the lesser talked about items that may or may not need to be talked about. So we're going to go through some of them as the show progresses, and try to avoid. I don't know. I don't even know. I don't see anything worth avoiding. So we'll just go from there, and I'll quit rambling through my intro music. Todd, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well.
Good.
And didn't you say on Facebook we're supposed to avoid Mandalorian spoilers?
Yeah, but you're pretty sure you said you're caught up, so we don't. We have zero respect for those that aren't caught up. It's been 2 weeks. No, it's only been a week now. I don't know. We've never we do some pop culture stuff every once in a while, but it's more. It tends to then be more sports talk, and really at this point, it's all been sports talk and what's going on between the protocols and all the different things the sports are trying to do to keep active against all the different stuff that's going on in the world around them. But I very much enjoyed The Mandalorian. I am a Star Wars dork. Since last time you were in studio with me, it's gotten significantly more. I've been kind of upgrading and doing different stuff, but I got some little Star Wars figurines that I've got glued onto different things out in the studio. I have a little TIE fighter that's on the end of one of these mic stands. So there's a little TIE fighter that flies around as people move microphones around. So I've always been a Star Wars dork. So my synopsis of Mandalorian is there was an image I had in my head when they started doing it, what I thought kind of the direction was, and it's not it, but I'm not mad at it either. Like one of the guys that I work with is really upset because he's a big, like Boba Fett bounty hunter Mandalorian kind of thing, and he wanted that seedy underworld, like Sopranos style storyline. And it's on Disney Plus, dude. It's not going to happen. But, my stance on it is we could get nothing and have nothing to talk about. So I'm going to go with stuff, and it's good. I enjoyed it.
Well, my wife really likes Grogu, Baby Yoda. We have a lot of that stuff around the house.
My wife also, yeah.
Yeah, I like they're filling in the blanks from Clone Wars and Rebels, Bo-Katan, Ahsoka Tano. And so I like getting that in live action.
Yeah, I do too. I think I'm assuming it's a conscious effort on their part to try to fill in some of those timelines and how we got from the old Empire to the New Republic and all that kind of different stuff. And I'm dork enough that I'm actually I've had to argue with another friend of mine about the timeline, like where this sits in the timeline. It's like, it's not hard, man. It's really not complicated at all where this sits in the grand timeline of all the movies and stuff. I don't know but he has a hard time putting together. It's like Death Star gets blown up twice. After the second time, Mandalorian starts. That's where we're at. And for some reason,
I think they've said 5 years after.
Yeah.
That right.
Yeah, and so I mean, and that's kind of neat thing because it's there's a lot of good allegory for actual world things that are happening, and there's probably real history based around it. You have countries that fall for one reason or another over time, and the little remnants and the warlords that continue on afterwards and stuff, pushing things different direction. And I find that neat about it as well. So we covered The Mandalorian. Moving on.
Well, this is a local politics podcast, right?
I mean, it is whatever you and I want to talk about, if we want to be real. But okay. I like talking to you, and I enjoyed you when you were here, and I enjoy interacting with you on Facebook for your insight and what the different things that are important to you and that you make a point of bringing attention to. And so the last one that I told you to stop talking about on Facebook so that we could talk about it is the baseball stadium situation.
Yeah. Well, I put a post up on Facebook. It's gotten a lot of action there, but there's a lot of good discussion going on.
I mean, yeah, because one of the things for me when it first started kind of shuffling around, I'd be a happy Knoxvillian if we had it. But then we start talking numbers, and I've been meaning to speak to some different landlords that I know either through my business or one of my coworkers owns a couple of rental properties residentially. And the conversation of how do you price a property? Because to me, we're talking $100 million. If you and I took a $100 million loan out on a building, if we got a normal mortgage at 30 years, interest free, that's $3.3+ million a year in mortgage. And so take that to a month, it's like $240,000 a month, I think's the math. is Randy Boyd is the Smokies organization gonna pay $250,000 a month rent?
Yeah, I'm sure that's not the deal.
Right, and that's what I'm saying, and it's like, because to me, if we could break even, if we as a city county in our investment can break even on the lease, then it's a win. We don't, in my opinion, we don't need to make money off of the rent of the facility. We need to break even on that, because then all the tax revenues and all the other stuff that comes out of that development will be the bonus money for us as a county.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't put the line straight at breaking even. Look, I mean, I've said this a couple of times on Facebook, and I can go both ways on this. I'm really not hard no or hard yes. I mean, I could see the argument where you would say, look, we don't need to break even because there are both tangible and intangible benefits to having that stadium here and what it might bring aside from
Right.
commerce or revenue or what have you. But you can't be a huge loss either. Right. And I'm kind of fundamentally, this is why I've said this on Facebook with because I think you talked about it when you did the two county chairs, Matt and Randy.
Well, hold on, we got to figure out how to say his name wrong just to piss him off.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I won't say Republic Party. But so, I mean, the fact that he's against it makes me want to question, because, if I want to say I'm against it, but I don't want to base my decision or what I think of it, it's not like it's my decision, based on what Randy Pace or Kyle Ward
right.
or his campaign manager the position they might take. And my gut tells me Randy Boyd has are we allowed to curse, shit ton of money, and it kind of feels like we're just helping him get richer, and I'm not sure that the taxpayer ought to be involved in helping Randy Boyd get richer, and
right,
unless there is some quid pro quo there for the taxpayer.
Right. And so, yeah, that's a good, that's a fairly good analysis, I think. And like, I guess to me is that I don't particularly care whether Randy Boyd gets richer or not, specifically him or his organization or whatever, but I care if it's at our expense. Does that make sense? Is that if it's just, it does and it grows the old city and expands the nightlife and all the different things, and a bunch of businesses pop up around it, and you got, especially coming out of pandemic, how many people are going to be in the position to start a new business, but how many new businesses will go in there, and obviously there's going to be residential in there, and then all that kind of other stuff as it grows. The part of that's a problem is Randy owns most of that stuff too, and so he's going to be the one that's benefiting off of because that's my guess. Like we were talking about a couple weeks on the show, and again, that's that break even formula that I'm thinking of. Is if I'm Randy, I'm certainly not as rich or as smart as he is, but if I'm Randy, I'm thinking if I can put the baseball in Knoxville, and the baseball team can break even close, might lose a little bit on the baseball team or make a little bit, but more or less break even on that enterprise. Everything that he's doing around it is where he really makes his money. And so I say, I agree with the formula. That's how the county should treat his stadium. That's kind of where I was at with that break even idea. So I don't particularly care whether he makes more money in the game or not. It's whether it's worth it to you and I as citizens.
Well, yeah. Look, I mean, he's a rich guy, and if he gets richer, that's none of my business unless it includes, what the Knoxville, Knox County equivalent of what you might call corporate welfare.
Right.
I object to, tax breaks that amount to largesse. I object to us bending over backwards to make sure that he can make a killing on this deal. I don't expect him to be a philanthropist and say, I really want this just for the purposes that Knoxville and Knox County are going to get better because of it. He's in it to make money, but
right. But then too, it's like, you're in it to make money. You got into it in the first place to make money. And if your business plan requires municipalities to foot the bill, then it's not a great business plan.
Yeah. Or
you can pull your weight and get the municipalities to hold the bill. And either way, that's where I'm kind of, the more I've thought about it, like, I kind of agree with Randy on certain points. Is that where in Knox County government does managing a building like that make sense, just in the what is the job of government kind of conversation? And then on the other side of it too is that it doesn't. I haven't seen any numbers specifically, other than that $100 million number of how much, if we owned it, we're going to lease it to them for. I just can't imagine the math makes sense at any level that $100 million is going to be paid back in rent or lease of that property to the baseball team.
Well, and you know that's why I don't object to a yes vote on the sports authority, because that's kind of just, let's get, that's the first step to be able to talk about the numbers.
Right.
And taking the step to establish the sports authority with Knoxville and Knox County just gets you to the point where you still have some hard questions to answer, and it doesn't hurt anybody to do that, I think.
Right. And nobody's asked me to be on it yet, so that's the only reason I don't like it.
Okay.
I don't know. And that's one of those things too. And this is another thing that we talked about a while ago on Facebook. But like, I mean, I'm assuming it's one of those appointment the commission bases, or the commission or the city council votes in people. Like, is it going to be, I don't know. I didn't get to watch the meeting where they were discussing it. Like, is it going to be that like, some of the commissioners and some of the city council people are on the board of this sports authority, or is it going to be citizens like they're doing with this alternate board of health thing that Kyle Ward's kind of putting together, where they want people to volunteer to be appointed to the position? Have you heard anything on that aspect?
I do not know how the sports authority will be made up and who's going to be on it. I don't, it's an entity they create, right? So it's not like it's based on Knox County Code or a Knoxville ordinance where they have to have X and Y person. It feels like they just come up with the makeup of the group and go forward.
Right, because that's going to be very interesting in the whole, well, depending on who we staff that sports authority up with, is their personal opinion on wanting to or not wanting it to be here is going to change how they go through looking at the numbers and applying it and stuff like that. And
yeah, although I will say, I mean, I think this may be a Tennessee state law issue, because haven't Nashville or Chattanooga or Memphis used this for their things? And so it's what allows local municipalities like Knoxville or those cities to do this. So maybe there's a state law component that would dictate
how the process goes.
But I don't know the answer to
that. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one, because again, like right now the discussion is, should we or should we not pay for it as a county city? And that's really all the conversation is. And like you said, the creation of this sports authority will get us to that next level of conversation on the more nuts and bolts part of it. But I get, for me, I'm on an AB of it. We own it, and we as a county city own it, and we lease it to the Smokies organization or build it himself. And the more I think about it, dig into it, talk to different people about it, he needs to just do it himself. If he really wants that team here and he really wants to develop property around that to make all the money off of those properties too, I think that's on him. I mean, my base libertarianism says do it yourself anyway, but trying to be a little bit more pragmatic and understanding of the world we live in, not the fantasy world of libertarianism. Even though I don't necessarily believe that statement, I'm just saying there is a level of, you got to, on any what's the, I'm just blanked out on the word, any philosophy as far as the public and government interaction, there is the perfect version that is fantasy to any one of them. No matter how we work it out, there is the compromise that is living in our society.
Well, it's one of those threads on Facebook that I read. It was Jesse from the Compass, shout out. And he did a pretty good rundown with Scott Barker. I think they were talking about not taking a side when they were arguing, but more, this is where they think it is. And his evaluation is that the votes are there in both city council and county commission to go forward. Right. I mean, certainly for sports authority, but I also got the impression he was saying he thinks the votes are there on both boards to, go forward and approve this, which, right. Again, that thing I put up on Facebook, because that group that's on Facebook, the one that is Kyle Ward's campaign manager, it makes me curious to know if Kyle's going to be a no, since his campaign manager is maybe leading a group against this.
Right. Well, or it's a fishing expedition
Yeah.
to try to see how many people are excited about the idea of being against it. And I mean, it could just be a way to, a weird way, but a way to kind of get the feel of the people and how they feel about it, as it pertains to his district, at least. So I don't know. I don't think we should pay for it. That's kind of where I'm at, and I'm done. You know, I mean, and you know, we'll see. Like you said, we'll see as the Sports Authority gets done and how it all spans out. Because I mean, you know, as long as I've lived in Knoxville and as many iterations of the old city and its boom and bust cycles, it's nice. The idea of having some of that other side of what is that, John Sevier, you know, developed up and making it a more attractive place to go and spend time.
Sure.
It's hard to say I wouldn't like that, but the how, I guess, is still the same question as where we started.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is an old conversation we had on Facebook that I was thinking about earlier today. What does a board of the Knox County Library do?
Oh, okay. We're gonna go to that. I don't know.
I mean, because
it's the Knox County Library Advisory Board,
right, and so I don't know. We can go all the way through the whole part of it, but just because I was thinking about it after we chatted about it, and it's like, you know, is it a volunteer position? Is it a paid position?
No, it's definitely it's a volunteer. I mean, when I was running, I was looking into this because I found it interesting how many of those kinds of boards, because you would see if you follow the agenda of the county commission, you see these items on there. There's usually one person from each numbered district. So maybe, you know, so in the case that you're referring to that I mentioned on Facebook, you know, the District 4 commissioner would come up with a person, put it before the county commission, they would vote, and that would be 1/9. I think it's just 9, but I mean, it may depend on the board of that board. It's a volunteer thing.
Right.
For sure. Yeah,
okay.
At least as far as I
know. Yeah, because I mean, regardless of, like, just as much as what we talked about was interesting in that, like, how many of these exist and how many of them are things and how much like, I didn't realize that we had all these different little appointed bodies that float around the city county as a thing. And, you know, it's like, it goes back to one of my main complaints even from the very beginnings of the show is like, I don't understand who's supposed to be doing what a lot of the time. And it's like, well, who do I go to with my issues? And the standard answer is my county commissioner, which I do. And now that especially now that I actually have met him personally and all that kind of stuff, it's a little bit easier. But, you know, it's I don't know. I guess this is probably one of the core libertarian things in me is it's so damn complicated to keep up with everything, you know, because I mean, you know, you have a small window of what you really care about. And I would argue for your sake, it's hard to keep up with
Sure. I mean, they have a page on the county commission website of various committees that like the commissioners are on, which include some commissioners and then other people across the county. It's not a very developed page. And when I was running, this is something that I was kind of looking into because I was, you know, very interested in what a commissioner would have to do.
Right.
And that's one of the things that I saw happened when I was going to those meetings. But there's not a good resource for the county. Now, maybe there's a resource for the city that's better, but for the county, I don't see a resource that names all of the boards, committees, and because the mayor appoints a ton of people to these kinds of things. Because you see that also on the, you know, he appoints it, and then the commission just rubber stamps it almost always.
Right. Which, I mean, is not specifically unique to a Knox County issue either. That's kind of one of those with a lot of different items, you know.
Well, and again, I don't object to, you know, people volunteering if they want to be volunteers for this kind of thing. That's probably a good thing. Library Advisory Board, I don't know what they do. Probably it's a good thing. You know, my objection to that, I don't know if we want to get into it, and I'll leave that to you. I don't need to.
Oh, it's up to you, man. What's the word I'm looking for here? Yeah. At minimum, I'm a nonpartisan, but if anything, yeah. I'm trying to put a non-biased opinion out. I mean, I have my opinions, but I
put it out on Facebook, and it was in the second month of Kyle Ward's tenure, and he appointed a campaign contributor to this position who also happened to be the wife of his single biggest campaign contributor. Now, again, it's a volunteer position. I don't care, but one of the things I would like to see is a little more transparency in everything you do. I don't know that, I don't know what happened behind the scenes, and maybe there was a very in-depth process that Kyle used to pick this campaign contributor to be appointed to this volunteer position. But I suspect, because that was something that I ran on, that it's more, they gave him money and they had access to him, and she wanted to go do this.
Right, because again, and in trying to be objective and looking at it when we discussed it before, like you said, like it is his duty as a commissioner to bring at least somebody to the commission to offer it to, and so one of the thoughts I had was maybe it's the inverse, is that he had to go out, and since he had a relationship with that donor, he was trying to recruit somebody, and that was it was the access that you are referencing to could have been reversed. Does that make sense? In that, he had access to the donor. He knew the donor that was obviously active in Knoxville and in Knoxville politics, or Knox County politics rather, and knew that there was interest in that household, and said, "Hey, I got this seat I need to fill. Would you guys be interested in?" I don't know. I haven't had a chance to talk to him about it yet, but just trying to look at it objectively. And again, it's not paid. I don't know that it necessarily makes sense that
in what he's doing. But that was my whole. One of the things that I ran on was the money in politics. The husband of the woman that was appointed is a rich and notable person in Knox County.
Right.
And I kind of feel like those positions, and this is what I would have done if I had not lost, give the opportunity to some other people, to some people that aren't just there because they're known or they have money.
Right. And then, and like you said, it goes back, part of it goes back to that poorly done site that may or may not be up to date, and making the public aware that this position's open for people that would want it. Yeah. Cause again, like, and I don't know, some of this stuff's weird, cause trying to get more active in it. Kyle and Briggs, are kind of spearheading this whole Board of Health debacle that's going on, and this new board that they're trying to put together. And I guess I started following Larson Jay's Facebook page, and he put the post out for the taking applications for this new Economic and Health Advisory Board, whatever it's called. And I was reading through it, and it's like there's nothing that applies to me. Like I could roughly call myself a business leader. But and not that a media person, not that I would call myself a media person anyway, has a real need to be a part of it, but just there was no, of all the people on the list, there was no citizen. Just Knox County resident wasn't an option. You couldn't apply as a resident. You had to have some of it were health backgrounds. They were looking for virologists and epidemiologists and business leaders and this, that, and the other. And it's like, well, I can honestly call myself a business person. I don't know if I call myself, I don't know what a leader in business is. I'm not, there's not other, there are other people that do things like me that I know have copied some of the things I do. So I guess I could call myself a leader for that. But that part just bothered me. It's that, like, I don't want to apply as a business leader. I don't want to apply as a podcaster. I just want to apply as a citizen who gives a shit, because I started to give a shit. And this one particularly, especially after that 7-hour meeting that we were at together. And you sat through that whole thing and had nothing to do with that part of the agenda, which I don't know how I would have got. I was about to give up, but I just like the idea that just a normal citizen doesn't have the credentials to at least be considered to talk about it, because it's mostly. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, plus you're being vetted. Those names are being submitted to Mayor Jacobs, and he's picking his favorites out of that, and then they're getting approved by the commission. It's not like the commission gets a list of the 7 best virologists in Knox County. It goes to Jacobs. He chooses 1 out of that 7 and sends it over to the commission. At least that's my understanding about it.
Right. So. Yeah, and so it's like either way, it's not. I don't know.
But maybe you give a bbig campaign donation to Mayor Jacobs' re-election campaign, and then you got a shot.
Well, if he was a better libertarian, I might.
I want to touch on this because you had was it the Tennessee State Libertarian Party chair?
I'm trying to get the local guy on right now too. We're having schedule problems.
I I'm just tucked it in my back pocket, and I'll bring it up here now because he said Jacobs is dues-paying libertarian, and after that whole debacle with Manis and whether he was a true Republican, kind of feels like, and part of the problem with Manis was he had donated to Democrats, right? Well, I mean, if he says he's a libertarian and he's a dues-paying member of the Libertarian Party, doesn't that raise a problem for him being the nominee of the Republican Party?
Yeah, that's a fair. I mean, that's a yeah. It was right, and I don't know. Like that's one of the things I've thought a lot about is what was the what was I mean I guess my thing is I don't know that I believe the argument that it was the donations and or voted for a Democrat issue with Manis. I feel like there's something more to that than just that part of it. And I have a guess, but I really hope I'm wrong. And I don't even want to say it out loud because it's terrible. But
right,
I can't imagine. I mean, I mean, I hope that's not the issue because I tend to have more faith in the general public than that. But I guess this isn't the general public either. But he's whatever. He's Eddie Manis is openly gay, right?
Yeah.
And like it dawned on me when I was sitting through that meeting. I sat through as a media for the state executive board or the state executive committee Republican meeting when they were deciding whether on Gina Oster's objection to the primary or whatever, and it kicked in or somewhere in my head because I didn't even know it. Like I didn't know it going into it. I had Eddie on and we talked about different stuff. I mean, he's a very public figure in Knoxville. I didn't know he was openly gay. I don't care. I mean, that's his business. He does what he wants. Again, libertarian, do what you want. But,
right.
It dawned on me at some point. I was like, it just, if that, it grosses me out that it's a possibility, I guess, is what I'm stuck on right now. That it's possible that was the real objection to him as a candidate for the Republican Party in the state of Tennessee.
Yeah. I don't know. It's probably enough for them, the fact that he seemed more like a Democrat to them than his sexual orientation.
Right.
But you never know.
I hope so. I hope that is the case. I really do. I just I don't know. Like I said, it's one of those that tickled in my ear, and I was like, God, I hope I'm wrong. But so yeah, it seems like it's hit and miss on whether they care about. I mean, and this goes for both parties. It's whether they care about certain specifics on a candidate or not. And again, that's one of those things about the two-party system that bothers me is that sometimes they'll be flexible because they need a candidate, and then sometimes they'll be super rigid because they got too many candidates. And It's like, well, I don't care about whatever standards you guys have. I want the best person for the job that I think is going to do the best job for me as the constituent of said person.
Well, I don't think that I'm running for mayor in 2 years, but if I were, that would be something that I would bring up just to cause him difficulty. And I suggest Larson J, who I hope will primary him. Feel free to use that point.
Well, I'm curious. Yeah, I mean it's a fair argument at the least. That's 22, right?
22, yeah.
Yeah.
I've also heard Bud Armstrong as a possibility, former law director, to primary Jacobs.
So you said something to me the other day, or said something on it when we were chatting back and forth on Facebook the other day. And I don't know, are you in the city or not?
I am not.
Okay, no. Never mind. You kind of alluded to you might run for city council, and then I was thinking about it, and I was like, I don't remember if he told me where he lived or if he's in the city or not technically. Because never mind. All right, fine. I thought you were alluding to a big secret that you were going to reveal.
No, I mean I've talked to a bunch of people, and I definitely might run in 2022 for something. But I think we could use some youth, and I'm an older guy, just turned 55, so I just my big thing again with when I ran was I want to make sure there's a choice, right? So it shouldn't be Larson J and Jacobs in the Republican primary and then no Democrat. And if that were the case, I would run for mayor because you need to have a choice, even though I would get stomped, and the same for all of the positions. and that would probably be my motivation at this point. There are a couple of races I'm looking at, a couple of people who need to lose for legitimate reasons, but
Well,
yeah.
Virginia Babb alluded strongly to me that she's not running for school board again.
Yeah, I've thought about that one, but there's probably a lot of great, and I'm very open about being partisan. I'm a Democrat, and that's a nonpartisan race, and so I'd have to dial back my Democratic fervor if I was going to run for school board.
I don't know. Why would you have? I don't. Why?
Well, I mean, I think that if I was going to do that, look, I'm very interested in how the schools are run, and that's a position I think I could, do something with. But I'm comfortable in the Democrat versus Republican dynamic.
Because I it has crossed my mind if she truly isn't going to run again, I just got to take a picture of it. That'd be one of the few things I'd actually might run for. The more I get into this, and the more I enjoy doing the podcast and stuff, the less I actually want to get into any office.
I'll tell you what, I'll clear the field for you, and I definitely won't run if you do.
Okay, well, see that. Anyway, I like doing this too much, and I would feel at least a little bit scummy about being in office and then trying to continue to do this, and it not coming off of me using this or the office to promote the other. And
yeah, but I mean, school board is nonpartisan. I mean, even the city council, which are nonpartisan, is it's really, there's some party stuff going on there. I kind of feel like school board is nonpartisan. I bet you could do this and be on the school board, and think of the ability to get the issues out to the public if you're doing your podcast.
All 50 or 60 of them. Hopefully you'd pick it up. That's what I'm saying, though, is like part of me can't help myself because that would be really good to help grow the podcast, and that's not what I would want to run for the school board for, but I wouldn't pretend to deny that I'm not enjoying the side effects, which is,
Pretty
like
sure
I said,
Randy Smith didn't like the fact that you were going to do the podcast if you were put on the health board.
Yeah, it sounded like, I know. I was so pissed off by the time I got up there. I mean, I'm not. One of the things about one of the things for me, I do not do speeches. I don't do public addresses well. Like I can at least pretend like nobody's watching on Facebook or whatever, even if there is or isn't. I don't know, but have a room full in here and have, we've had shows that have had pretty good, a couple hundred downloads and stuff, depending on who the guest was and stuff like that. Sharif was probably I got a couple of Egyptian and English listeners from Sharif when he was on,
really?
which was really cool to look at the map and be like, hey, there's people listening to us in Egypt. But
hey, I mean, neither here nor there. I play tennis with his dad pretty regularly at the tennis club. He's a diehard Trumper. His dad.
How interesting.
Yeah.
But
although I'm friends with Sharif on Facebook, I found him to be a really nice guy. I voted for him over the other guy, although I like Eric Letton too.
I did too. I'm the same with you. I remember going into that August election going, this is my favorite problem I've ever had as a voter. I don't think either one of these guys has any intent to do anything gross. I think both of these guys are well qualified and equipped, and they can do the thing. One guy's been doing it, and he's been doing it well as an appointment to end a term, where this other guy's very interested and likes everything that's going on and wants to continue it. And it's like, well, we got maybe some fresh ideas that'll move to the next level or continue it down the road that we're at. We couldn't go wrong, in my opinion, as a county with either one of them.
Well, and I think you've said a couple of times that was one of your favorite interviews you did because of what you learned about the public defender's
Oh yeah,
office.
absolutely.
I learned a ton about it from that podcast, so that was really helpful to me.
Yeah, I think it's one of the greatest things governmentally, I think, that we're doing here in town, because I didn't know that's how any of that worked, and that we're one of the more prestigious public defender's office in the country, for that matter. And there's other people, and there's law schools sending students here to learn on how we do it. And I just think that's fantastic, and I hope it continues. Lost my train of thought earlier. Oh yeah, well, I'm not running for. I don't know. That meeting where he didn't like that I was going to use being on that. I mean, I'd at least be there. I mean, I've watched a couple.
Probably didn't have Commissioner Smith's vote anyway. But it seemed like he ruled you out as soon as you confirmed that yes, you would continue to do the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, and again, why? I mean, my whole issue, that was what I was getting at. I suck at public speaking, And I was pissed off by the time I got up there because I'd been there that long and they were discussing not even hearing us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but my whole point in wanting to, in actually going through the effort on that was the problem with the Board of Health to me is that it's not, the communication is an issue. It's not clear. It's not simple. It's not understandable to normal people, which was my pitch. It's like, I'm just a normal dude. And if the commission, if I'm in a Zoom meeting, obviously not in person, but if we're in a meeting and they're talking about policies and I don't understand why it applies, then not half of Knoxville is not going to understand it either. So let's try to work on the verbiage and how we're talking about this so it's clear and concise and normal people can understand it. That was my whole pitch. And like I said, I suck at public speaking and couldn't get it across because I was like, I'm not special. I'm kind of stupid. Pick me to be on this thing. And it was like, nah. But, you know, and again, like you said, I feel like, I don't know. I don't have confirmation of this, but I feel like a number of people that were there, they were at least pre-vetted, maybe not intentionally, but they knew they were known in the process where I wasn't, where I was just.
Well, if you remember how it worked first was Biggs suggested the citizen rep and also said, and we should appoint this person who's been pre-cleared with Mayor Jacobs, who was, I don't know, the owner of the copper cellar or something. Some Burleson, I think is his name. And fortunately they shot that down and said, no, we should, you know, get a process to, you know, look at a bunch of different people. And then they put it out and all the different commissioners were supposed to go to their districts and come up with people. And then, you know, it was the end of that night and a bunch of people had left and they were about to say, well, everybody's left, so let's, you know, and it was the handful of people, including you, from whom they chose the.
Yeah, I mean, I was behind. I was sitting in the back of the room, but I got up and I did the hands up. I was like, I've been here for 7 hours.
Yeah.
At least I'm going to go up and make a fool of myself real quick. But I've been here for 7 hours. You're going to hear me say something stupid. Let's go. That's where that yeah, like I said, I was not happy. But it's interesting. Something I don't know that, you know, I don't know that I will. This is terrible, but I don't know that I'm going to put forth that kind of effort until the pandemic's over.
Well, I actually, you know, I had been going during the campaign to every meeting. Or attending via Zoom, watching via Zoom. And then even after I lost, I continued to attend. But once the craziness with the Board of Health anti-mask folks, I just decided to take a break for the rest of 2020. I'm going to start going back in January because I think I need to.
I mean, it's again, like I've watched them. I've been to that one. I've watched a handful of them, and I tried to glean some information and some knowledge off it. It's just, it's so, I don't know what the word I'm looking for here is. It's not digestible as it sits, to really understand, because there's so much process that's already happened. They did their meeting on whatever the issues are beforehand, and they already had their whole discussion on it, and whatever they're officially voting for at the meeting is already kind of done. And so it's like, well, I have even on the Board of Health kind of thing, the 7,000 people get up there and say their same two arguments over and over and over again. The decision's already made. You know, I think I don't remember. I think it was Matt Shears. It might have been you. I don't remember. Was calling out Kyle for playing on his phone when somebody was talking Board of Health stuff.
Oh, yeah.
You know, which is fucked up. I mean, that's what the job is. Your job is to listen. You know, and benefit of the doubt, maybe some actual constituent. Maybe it was me texting him at the time, which is inappropriate either way. But you know, I when the decision's already made, I can't get too mad at a person for getting bored and listening to something that doesn't make a difference.
Right.
And
well,
so,
I don't know if you know, the big thing out there is sunshine law. The fact that like 4 of the commissioners are there in person, and there were times during the course of the meeting where they were muting or turning off their camera, getting up, and it was clear they were talking to each other outside of the course of the meeting, which, you know, commissioners aren't supposed to do that. And so there's been some complaints filed against them for that. I don't know if it'll go anywhere, but
I mean, that's fair. They should be complained on for that. I mean, if that's the thing. I mean, like when I was there, when they took a break or whatever, I guess they have some place they go out of the room, and it passed through the hallway, because I was in the extra room for the first 3 hours of that thing. Mm-hmm. You know, and they kind of all piled out, and I mean, there were other people in there, so I guess it was technically covered under sunshine law, because they were talking to some constituents as well as each other as they were on their way out of the room.
Well, they may be okay because it is announced. This is a commission meeting. It's 5 o'clock on the third or fourth Monday and they're there. The fact that they're not in the same room with some of the folks that are on Zoom may not be a problem, but anyway,
Right.
that's something that they'll probably have to address at some point.
Right, because we accidentally almost ran into it. I had Kyle and Courtney coming back to back one day, and I was like, hey, why don't we just do it together? And then I was like, oh yeah, you got that sunshine law thing. Does that work? I don't know if they ever asked the law director if it counts.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it wouldn't be open to the public per se. Well, I guess this. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what that. I mean, technically, this is open to the public right now. Me and you.
After they were sworn in, the two Democrats, Dacia and Courtney, had a couple of just luncheons to discuss, what they were going to do, and they had to publicly notice the fact that we're going to be at this restaurant and we're going to have lunch together because of the sunshine law.
Right, and then you throw the pandemic on top, and it's like, well, how many people are allowed to be in there and watching them talk? But it's madness in general on that kind of stuff right now. So I'm trying to think of what else. There's so many things. I ran out of my. I think I went through the specifics that I really wanted to talk to you about, but I'm open to whatever you got.
Well, I mean, what do you think with the Board of Health? I guess is the big thing because we're in the middle of that ordinance, and
I mean, I get it. I get both conversations. I get both sides of both conversations. Again, the libertarian in me is going to lean towards. I don't like the idea that an unelected body is making rules and regulations that I am required by law to follow. Both as a business owner and as an individual. I don't like a lot of the mandate stuff ends up falling on the business to police, for lack of a better word, and I don't think that's fair to businesses to take on that responsibility. And so, again, I think to me, there's how do I word this? It's like I don't know how to word this. It's like I don't know Martha Buchanan, right? I've never met her. I see her on TV all the time. She's apparently Knox County Person of the Year. I have no complaints about that award that she is given. But, I understand. I respect the fact that she has public health. That's what she does. But at what point does she have permission to tell me what to do?
Well, I think her position is because I've been following. If the ordinance that they're going to pass do on second reading in January goes and makes the Board of Health advisory, then it's going to fall back on Dr. Buchanan.
Right, and she still gets the authority through the state.
She'll be doing the same thing, but I think her authority, I'm not sure that while I think he would try and find a way, I suspect, who knows, Mayor Jacobs will just fire her. I'm just not sure if he can, because there may be some element at the state level that unless there is cause, he can't fire her.
Right.
At least this is something that I saw, and I haven't looked into the details. So there's some authority coming from.
Right. My understanding is the Board of Health or the individual or group that has the authority to do things like the Board of Health is doing now is a state level. That authority is given at the state level and managed or something. I can't remember the verbiage, but it's something like that where it's managed locally, but it's a state level authority for the counties that have health departments. That's the big caveat that I've seen on it. It's for the counties that have health departments. It's either the state health department if you don't have your own health department, or the state health department basically supports counties that have a health department's decision-making process. Is kind of how I understand it. And so that's one of the things that frustrated me about that meeting is that hearing these same arguments over and over and over again. And it's like, well, this body doesn't really have the authority to do it. And that's why I'm still confused on what the whole ordinance thing is. It's like, well, if this body has its authority from the state, how does the county commission get to take that authority away?
Sometime last summer, I don't remember the exact, because before that point, Martha Buchanan was setting all these restrictions in her position as the public health director.
Right.
At some point, Bud Armstrong's office, Bud Armstrong as law director, said, no, it's not on you. The Board of Health has to do that. And from that point forward, the Board of Health had to issue those restrictions, mask mandate, curfews, etc. And that's what, oh my God, unelected board that's, Constitution.
Right.
Now with this ordinance that will take that power away from the Board of Health, which I think will be passed in January. The power is just going to flow back to Martha Buchanan, which she had last spring.
Right.
And unless Jacobs fires her, or unless she feels pressure from Jacobs to do something else, or unless the vaccine and everything else and the numbers get better and she says, okay, I can lift this stuff, she's just going to do the same stuff that
Right.
the Board of Health
and I get the what's the word I'm looking for? I get the mechanics, sort of. I'm not 100%, just like you. We're not exactly clear where the authority and all that kind of stuff exactly comes from. I get the mechanics of kind of how this is working, because I mean, realistically, take the pandemic out of conversation, the Board of Health and or the health department or the head of public health gets to do a lot of these similar things. It's just we've never seen the scale before. Mm-hmm. And so really what people are freaking out about is the scale of what's always been there. I mean, it's the same body that does like your health inspections at your restaurants, that tells, I'm sure they get guidance from all sorts of different people, but a piece of chicken's got to be 165 or higher, or it's not cooked chicken and you're sending out raw chicken. Same kind of stuff. And we didn't vote that into law either. And so, like, again, trying to be more pragmatic than fully libertarian on it is like, I get the entities of it. And like, I don't know, it's one of those, I get lost in the weeds on it, because like I get both sides of it very well. Like, I understand that there are shitty businesses out there that do shitty things. The restaurants being an easy example. You're going to find a place that serves raw chicken, whether it's on purpose or accident, or cutting corners, or all the different little stuff. And having a body that can be there to help protect the public from a bad business is important. But at the same time, it kind of, to me, it kind of leads an assumption that, and this is one of the things I get defensive about personally, is that it leads the assumption that business people are trying to find corners to cut. And if these entities aren't there, they're going to cut them. Most restaurants that I've worked in personally, most restaurants that people that I know either own or work in and stuff like that, they try to do their thing correctly because it's the right thing to do for their business, not because the Board of Health makes it so. And so that's one of those where, like, I get it on both sides. I understand the premise of it. It's like, I'm a free citizen. I should be able to move about freely inside the county, but I may also be transmitting a disease that does kill a number of people and is growing every day. So how do we navigate this with both the individual and the public safety in mind? And it's like, I don't know. I'm frustrated at the idea, and the more I go, and I've been essentially, I've worked through this entire thing. The more I go through it, the more I at minimum realize that we as a populace don't put forth the effort to try, I guess is the best way I can think of it. We don't put forth the assumption that these mandates need to be in place because we're not going to do the right thing isn't wrong, and that's what bothers me more than anything. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Like I like, we are human beings. We're selfish entities at the core. That's just how we are. That's part of being a human, and I understand that. But there is a communal quality that we again have as humans that has evolved in us over the years. The reason I don't like public speaking is because I haven't had good practice at it. But I was listening to some guy who was talking about like the evolutionary psychology of why public speaking is so terrifying to most people, is because back in the Stone Ages or whatever, when you were talking in front of a group, you were pleading for them not to kick you out of their tribe, because when you're out alone in the woods, you're going to die. And so the idea of speaking publicly was you're in trouble. And so that's where some of the evolution of that comes from. I don't know. I haven't gotten deep into that, but there is a communal aspect to us as people, and either we've lost that as people, or the Board of Health, the government as a whole doesn't trust us anymore. And so they feel like they need to do it because we're incapable of doing it on our own. And that, I don't know how that necessarily breaks down on the for or against the Board of Health thing. It just makes me sad. Either way, either we stop caring about we don't care about each other at all anymore, or we're too dumb to, or our government thinks we're too dumb to listen to recommendations without making it law.
Well, what do you think about the vaccine? Because I know that there are some of the people who don't want to be forced to wear a mask also say, I'm not taking the vaccine.
I mean, I'm, how do I word this? I'm not mad that I'm not high on the list.
Yeah.
I'm
My wife works at Fort Sanders, so she got her first vaccine, but I'm sure I'll be farther down the list.
right.
I'll take it when it
Right,
comes.
like AC on the show, he's a nurse, and he got it a week or so ago, and he said it was fine. He didn't have any issues with it,
Mm-hmm.
but at least round one of it or whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah, again, I don't. In my understanding of the whole thing, I am not in a huge risk personally. My family's not in a huge risk. Our circle that we interact with regularly is not a huge risk. So I'm happy to let again, it having the vaccine as quickly as we've done it, and if the studies are right and all that kind of stuff, it's the most, I don't know, probably top 5 human achievements ever to get a vaccine of this magnitude out as fast as they did. But I'm happy to have a little bit more guinea pig before I get my shot at it.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you're the libertarian. What about the people who aren't going to take it? Do we get enough people to take the vaccine so that we can get the herd immunity that would come from
Right.
vaccinating 80%
I
or
don't.
90% of the population?
The idea of forced vaccinations really grosses me out. I don't like that. The idea of having to have a card or some sort of verification to interact in the public, showing
Your
that you
kids
have
can't
had
go to school unless they get
right,
vaccinated.
and to me, at least with like what my kids had to do for school, it was, there was enough history in it that it wasn't a concern to me. I was never an anti-vaxxer in the sense that I don't think that I'm sure there are cases where some kid got a vaccine and it triggered an autism or something like that, but I don't believe that is normal. It's an exception, not the rule. I think vaccines, as we know them for the most part, are really well done, tools to do a job, and have had years and years and years of refining by the time it got to my kids. But this one hasn't, and so this one I'm a little bit more concerned with a forced vaccine part of the conversation, especially for the kids that and again, in my understanding, which is limited, kids are, my kids' age, at least 10 or 8 and 10, are decimal 0.000 something risk of any real damages from it, as we know so far. So a short run vaccine that, again, amazing that it's come out this quick, but I'm happy to let as much time as possible go between, especially my kids. Let it get out there into the public, and let us get a little bit more data on it before I'm going to be real comfortable putting it in myself and my kids.
But you're a leader in the community, Seth. You should take the vaccine on podcast.
Well, I cry at needles, though. It's not a good look. It's not a good look for me. But I mean, to me, if we could talk about the breakdown of how it's coming out and who gets access to it first and stuff like that, because there are some issues that the libertarian in me is like, I don't an 85-year-old lady versus me. It's not fair that she has access before me, and that's fun to argue about. But again, I don't care to get it or not, so I'm happy to let her get it first. But I don't know. I mean, if I'm a bad leader for being cautious, then I'm a bad leader. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not. If I were under more threat, if I had a secondary ailment that made it a bigger deal, if I'd been locked in my house for this whole year because it was in my own best health interest to do so, then I might be more willing to go ahead and be on the front in the early set of getting it, because it's a matter of life or death. Where as I understand it, for me right now, I don't see it as being deadly.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that there haven't been cases in my age group that have died from it, but I don't know. I encourage people to make their own decision on that. That's the libertarian says it's not my decision to make.
Okay.
So that's what, I don't know. What else you got?
No, I mean, the rest of the stuff that I'm following, I think, is national politics, which, maybe that's not
okay.
Place for this.
No, I thought I wanted to ask you, and now I forgot it. Okay. So this is one that I've been asking around, and we've been talking about in general. Is
you also haven't asked me about Metro?
Well, I mean, I already know your opinion on Metro. I don't need to ask again, unless it's changed. Has it changed?
No.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the baseball thing kind of brings it back into conversation, because we're now using both bodies together to make a third body to govern a new thing. But anyway, Does family count? Like, like this, the whole Hunter Biden thing um, brings up this question. It's not specifically about him, but how do we, as the public body, how are we supposed to treat family of politicians? Like, if you're like, your wife is her own person and she makes her own decisions. How is it supposed to affect you as a politician? Like those kind of things. Like that's the thing that I've been thinking about a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's Hunter Biden is politics. I mean, if it's like Joe maybe has some minor grandchildren, Barron Trump, nobody needs to deal with Barron Trump. I mean, I'm not sure any of Trump's kids even matter, except that they've kind of put themselves into the politics on their own. But I mean, if Hunter Biden did something wrong, then the process ought to play itself out. And if Joe, protects him inappropriately because of his position, has in the past, or does as president, then I would want that to come to light. I don't think that it is as the people on the right say it is.
Right.
But I mean, but by the same token, he's definitely had advantages and taken advantage of the family name in his business dealings.
Right. Which anybody's going to naturally do at some level, even if you don't do it on purpose. It's going to happen. Oh, you're the vice president's kid. Here's a free cheeseburger. Well, I can't take that. My dad's just because my dad's, and so like I get that part of it too. I just like it happens on and off over time. Just different, different politicians over time. Where it's what was it? Jimmy Carter's brother Billy and his beer.
Right.
Just different. Like you think about these different little random stories where some politician's family member, and it's like how are we supposed to treat that? Is how much does a related individual's decision making, should it affect our decision making on the actual individual in question?
Well, I would be against Hunter Biden being in the Biden cabinet, but I'm not going to sit here and, well, obviously I'm on the Democratic side, so I'm not going to try and go after Joe for anything with his kid. I mean, he loves his kid. His kid's made some mistakes, clearly. There's some drug addiction issues, but he should just disown his kid because he's in politics. No, he just owns it. Clearly, Hunter was an issue for some people, and yet Joe still got more votes. So, going forward, there may be a Republican Senate, and they may investigate Hunter because they want to score political points. Okay, I mean, I wish they wouldn't do that, but if the Republicans hold the Senate, they may do that. If there are actual crimes that Hunter committed, then investigate them. I hope that Joe appoints an attorney general who is hands off, unlike the AGs that Trump appointed, and that Joe doesn't try and influence the decisions made by his AGs. But other than that, I don't really think about Hunter Biden.
Right, and I guess that's where I lean is where it should be. It's like I don't know, I don't really have my brother does live here in town, but he doesn't have any skeletons that I know of that would matter or should matter. Is like kind of my spot. It's like he is his own person, he's making his own decisions. Now, I don't know. Again, as a father, there's that catch though. It's like I would. If I'm the vice president and my son gets caught in some foreign country doing something he ain't supposed to, I'm going to wield the power that I have to get him out of it. And I can't blame, I couldn't blame Biden for it if he did, but I would have issues as things move forward with it. So that's kind of where I'm at on that one. Very, very unclear. I don't know what else is going on actually for you.
Well, I just, it's hard. My wife gets really torn up about everything that Trump does, and I'm just so numb to it at this point that every single little thing, I can't even deal with it. But I after I gave myself until November 3rd to kind of argue with people on Facebook, and I said, okay, after that I was going to quit doing that, and I haven't, and I really need to make that a New Year's resolution to quit arguing with people.
It's hard.
one of the things that I did with my campaign was to try and increase my social network. So I have a lot of Facebook friends, and that means that I see a lot of crap on Facebook that sometimes I just can't let go. And I go, and there are people in Knoxville that have, just the worst opinions, and the whole stop the steal nonsense just drives me insane. Or as my wife might say, it's not a long drive. So,
That's a good
you
joke. I
know,
like that.
I, I'm gonna try and get back into local politics after the first of the year. Get to January 20th, and hopefully I can stop having to worry about tweets from the White House, and
Yeah.
focus on. I think 21 could be a good year. We recover from the pandemic, and let's see what City Council does, and then. I personally am going to look at whether I want to run for something in 22, which means I'll be doing something with that in 21.
That's, I mean, yeah, and I agree with you. Like, I really have to like throw my phone across the room to not start arguments that I want. Like, I see stuff and it's just like, I want to say something because you're wholly misinformed about what you're saying. You're allowed to say what you want to say, but here's the truth. And then I'm like, no, because then it's like 5 hours later and I'm still arguing the original point, and then 15 other people jump in. Like, that's the main thing for me. I can't, like, I could like comment something, like when I comment on something you posted, or I make a comment to a comment that you made or something like that. In my brain, I'm still just talking to you, and then just some third party person who has access to seeing what we're talking about because it's on Facebook jumps in. It's like, I'm not
Right.
talking to you. Shut up. You
Yeah.
don't come in here interrupting the conversation I'm having, and then it gets angry, and I don't like it. But
Yeah.
so yeah, I'm like you. I'm excited for 21. I think it's going to be, I mean, it's not going to be hard to beat 20. So, but I think as we come back and we'll see how the whole thing moves forward. Because again, going back to the Board of Health thing is like, is this vote, is what they're voting on to do what they're doing a reaction to a short-term situation, or is it actually something long-term that they feel like is important? And that's the one thing I'm not sure I've ever heard anybody talk about, because it's all been short-term stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny. The people that come to public forum, they kind of make three different arguments which don't always mesh well. One, it's unconstitutional and they're unelected and they shouldn't be making the laws, the regulations, the mandates. Or two, the virus isn't real, it's all a hoax, this is no worse than the flu. Or there's a third angle to it too, but now I've blanked on that. But it's like they're I can't tell if they know what they're saying, because they argue at different sides of the issue sometimes, and don't realize if we get rid of the Board of Health, you're going to have the same effect, because Martha Buchanan's going to be putting into place the same things. And then are you going to go and start attacking Martha Buchanan?
Right. Or she's going to be, right, instead of her being forced to have um, a publicly held meeting with people to talk to about it and have different opinions going up, she just gets to do it without anybody else's opinion, or at least not in plain
Yeah.
sight. She can have the same conversation with the same people behind closed doors now, instead of us being able to watch it. Which again, I mean, if they're gonna do it, it needs to be public, and they have, and that's a good thing. And yeah, and it's again, it goes back to me. It's whether it's we as the public are untrustworthy, or just they don't trust us. And either way, it sucks. I don't know how, like, that's the best. I'm not articulating well exactly what I'm trying to get at, but it's because nobody's argued the point. It's like, well, tell me what the right thing to do is, and trust me to do it isn't an option.
Yeah.
And because I remember being 15 and Dad says do X and I do Y because he said do X, which does bring me to something I did want to mention to you. And you mentioned it earlier tonight too, is that I get where you're getting at it when if Randy Page, what'd you call him earlier?
Yeah.
If Randy Pace is down with an idea, then you automatically aren't. and then you got to really work. You got to work through it and make sure you actually are, because, not illogically, you're kind of opposite of most things that he wants. And that when he first said that in one of our Facebook back and forth, that one caught me a little bit off. It's like, you already, I can't remember what it was that we were talking about, but you'd already had an opinion on it. And then when Randy on here said your opinion on it.
The law director vote.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. From the
that
first
was the first time. And he had the same position as I did on the law director vote. And I was firm on that and had been going to public forum at the Charter Review Committee meetings, and then Randy Pace was out there saying the same thing, and I had to, I didn't change my vote or anything, but it made me question, because I kind of think he's wrong on everything. And maybe in this case, he's just so wrong, he comes around to the right position.
I just like that to like, I don't know, I'm not trying to offend with it, but I think it's kind of a silly way to do it.
Again, with the stadium thing, I'm really on the fence. I don't have a strong, if they came down and said, we're going to do it with the Sports Authority and we're going to go ahead and we've looked at the numbers, okay, or look, taxpayer money shouldn't be used, so the answer is no. I said, I can go either way. And then in this case, Kyle's campaign manager and Randy are both against it, so that makes, I hate to say that it pushes me the other way.
Well, see, that's where it concerns me, and it is that because their opinion is X, you feel like it's wrong because they have a track record, and it's a logical conclusion to make that if they make a statement that it's probably the wrong thing, so you automatically. But I don't know, like that's the wrong reason to change an opinion to me. Is that I agree that it's worth taking another look at as a result of. But, whether it's dumb luck or not that they have the same opinion as you shouldn't make you switch opinions. That's all I'm concerned with.
Yeah. Well, no, I feel like I have the strength of my convictions when I have a strong conviction. But, on this stadium thing, I'm still on the fence.
I got
the law director, I voted against it, and I think that was the right thing to do, even though Randy Pace also voted against it.
I think somebody needs to get a stern talking to about how they worded that. That was the worst about it. That was like, because we went. Yeah. I think we spent time on 3 different episodes before the election trying to clarify what yes and no mean.
Oh yeah,
because
the other one, especially the one about the spread of record of the contracts, was just so bad.
Yeah,
I voted against it on principle of how poorly it was worded.
Like, to me, it's like I understand that they're wording it in a way that that when we vote upon it, it will be pulled from that ballot and put into the charter word for word, because that's how it's, the legalese above it. It's amending this word and changing this word and changing this line from saying this, and it's changing this. But you put that in there as the official thing, but you put the header on there in a nice simplified yes. A vote yes makes the law director appointed. A vote no keeps it elected. Then the legalese underneath it. If you need to do the legalese for legal purposes, because that's what's going to get plopped in there, that's fine. But give us the Cliff Notes version as a voting public, so that we don't have to have idiots like me having it explained to you 3 times before I figure it out, so that I can explain it to the public. Because once I figured it out, it was simple, because it's really yes or no to a change is all it was. It was yes or no to a change. No meant we weren't changing it, and what we're currently doing is voting on it. But it's really because I remember Sam on the show, he's like, I might have voted yes. I was like, why? He's like, because I want to vote for him. I was like, no, it's backwards, and so like that part of it really bothered me about that part. But, so I don't know. I might work up my my Metro framework and then present it, and then go out and try to get enough signatures to make it a ballot item, whether the commission likes it or not.
Yeah.
Or the city council. I don't know. See, I don't know how that works. I need to get Chris Davis back in here to walk me through the process of how that would work on which districts, or whether the city of Knoxville or the county, or both, I have to collect signatures from. I would guess both. Again, it's going to.
I kind of think you have to get both to approve that before they'll join into one metro government.
Well, I don't know if Kyle was right. Well, if one of the options that Kyle was talking about is how it could work is right, the city could just off itself, for lack of a better word, and then the county would have to take over. So if I could get the city to vote on committing suicide as a metro or as an entity, that would be the only way I could probably do one, not both sections.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if the county.
Well, that's rooting for Knoxville to do itself in. I'm not sure that's the
That's
best
what I'm
way.
saying. Like, yeah, it's like, hey, do you, I mean, but and again, it's a matter of it's a matter of presentation at the time. But yeah, it would be that's the only way I could think of to doing it a little bit easier. So, but because it'd only be a city ballot item, and I don't know if I can't vote on that, so I don't know if I can. I don't know if I could. I mean, I guess if I have enough signatures, it wouldn't matter if I'm a resident or not. Just because I'm spearheading it doesn't mean it's for me.
Yeah,
I don't
you
know.
can get somebody.
Yeah, I'll find some random city resident. One of the many homeless people around here it's getting bad.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm trying to think of other national issues that have been fun and exciting. Not really. I want this election to be done officially and over with officially. I'm not particularly happy about Biden, but given the alternative, I could go. I could go either way. So just let's do the process and move forward.
Mm-hmm. Well, so I have my best friend growing up is very conservative, but more on the libertarian side, not a party Republican type conservative. And his whole thing is, gridlock is a feature, not a bug. And he would be happy if the Republicans held on to the Senate because basically nothing would get done and the federal government couldn't do anything.
Well,
Thoughts?
the problem is that they do, but they do it even worse than they would if it was. I don't know, because like right now we're in the middle of a perfect example of why gridlock isn't good, because we drop a 6,000 page bill. You got 2 hours to vote on this. I can't read 5 pages in 2 hours and understand it, especially in the verbiage that they use for that kind of crap. I mean, a number of different people made issues with it. Tulsi Gabbard was one of my favorites. She's like, how do you expect me to put any amount of thought into this, let alone read it, and then come back and vote on this? So I'm going to vote no. And I'm pretty sure she was like one of 7 that didn't. I don't remember what the numbers were exactly. I mean, Marsha Blackburn, which as much as I like to shit on Marsha Blackburn, she voted no against this bill, and I was pleased in it. I don't like. I understand that it was kind of a couple things wedged together into one, and it's all under the COVID relief umbrella, which is not accurate. It's an omnibus spending package on top of the COVID relief bill. And a number of different people are. I mean, Trump's whole pitch right now is like he's like, you're getting $600, but we're sending $500 million to Israel. How stupid is that? Which I agree with that on all terms, regardless. But I generally agree that gridlock's a feature. The less that are getting done, the less chance they have to screw more things up. But then it gets to this. Well, we want to go home for Christmas.
Well, I'm going to give you the counter argument for why it's irresponsible to vote no on this, and that is, I think it's disingenuous to say you've given me 2 hours to read this 6,000 page bill when most of it's going to be boilerplate, which means that language has been in existence since September when they were trying to pass the original continuing resolution or the next bill that would fund the government, and they kept doing these continuing resolutions. Here's another 90 days, here's another week. So the language has been there since then, and if you as a representative or a senator personally, and especially because you have staff who can give you an executive summary, they can do the hard work of reading and give you the summary. You can either personally take the time to read it, which I think in that position you ought to, but you've had the opportunity to read almost all of this stuff.
Right. You had bits and pieces, and you had chunks, you had chapters, but not the whole book at once.
Yes.
And
so
then
it's
we
not
got the
a
whole
matter
book
of
at
I
once.
only have 2 hours to read. So this is the Tim Burchett argument. I only have 2 hours to read this. Well, Tim, you've had
6
most
months
of this from September or maybe even earlier. You know what's in. You're reading all the, you're reading the news. Your staff has access to all of this stuff. You know what there is. And the fact that, gridlock has made it so that we couldn't get the votes to get it passed until the last second. Well, I mean, that's also on you. Be a little more proactive and get it, work to get this stuff done. And be up on the details of what's going in, so that if it comes down to the last second because of whatever partisanship or gridlock, you're able to make an informed decision and not just say no because I can't read 6,000 pages in 2 hours.
Right. So to counter your counter would be, how much of it did you read?
I read zero, but I'm not elected.
Right, but it's still you as a constituent are afforded an opinion on it. So again, understanding that it's been out and it's probably been publicly available since midsummer or whatever. But all the time, now it's under the gun, and you've been, loosely paying attention to it. But you want to take a quick chance to email Burchett and be like, "Hey, man, as a constituent, here's how I feel about this. This is what I think you should do," or whatever. How many people are out there that have the time to keep up with it through that whole process? Because I've read some that when they hit the floor, or when they as they get a little closer to congealing into a thing, where I try to read up and see what this thing is actually doing, within a couple days that it gets voted on. I would imagine that most people wouldn't have the time to keep up with something that's been in process for 6 months and have it all ready in file when it comes a chance that I want to reach out to my congressman or senator or whomever is voting on it to actually get it in that small a window, personally. But again, I understand what you're saying is that that's what they're elected to do, and so our voice was already opinioned, but we still have, it's a continual process to me that we get to still voice our objections, or whatever the opposite of objection is. I don't know where that word just went in my head. But that we as the public should have time to sound off too on some level.
Yeah.
And again, that goes into a number of other issues that are problems with government in general. To me, is that the fat everybody talks about, or the pork they add on, or the earmarks and all that kind of different stuff. I would love the idea that you are only allowed one item, no add-ons. You can adjust one item, but if any adjustments or anything don't have anything to do with what the point of the bill is, it doesn't need to be on there. You do a separate bill for all of them. I don't care if you have to vote 55 times because you have 55 different bills, because they're very specific and they're only 5 pages apiece. You don't need to have a 6,000 page bill that shoves all of it in together. Get rid of that. To me is the bigger issue with that one. But I appreciate that argument, though, that I didn't think about it that way, and that is stuff that they already know.
And then, coming back at you, I think I'm pretty well informed, but I'm not reading the actual source, right? I'm reading the news, and I listen to people who have read it either on podcasts or in other sources. But one of the things that I think is important is every 2 years I have a chance to look at someone that I think will make the right decision there. If it's 6,000 pages and I can't possibly read the 6,000 pages, I have a choice between Tim Burchett and Renee Hoyos. And during the campaign between Tim Burchett and Renee Hoyos, Renee and Tim will tell me, here's how I will deal with these issues. And then I have a chance to say, okay, well, I like Renee and
Right.
how she's going to deal with these issues much better. And so, representative democracy, she's the one that I would want to be my representative in the House, to be able to deal with that. Not that allows me to abdicate all responsibility to know what's going on. But again, I wanted Renee. She didn't win, obviously.
Right, but that goes to what I'm saying too, though, is that Renee may have been very clear about a number of items that's in this bill on how she stood on it, but since there's hundreds of items squeezed into this thing, she's now having to make a decision on that. I mean, some of them could be things that she specifically spoke for and against, and it's all shoved into the same thing. So
Sure.
they can't. There's no. Go ahead.
I have the choice between two. She for me is the better one. I'll take her judgment, even though she hasn't told me specifically how she would vote on every possible issue that could come before her in the House.
Right, but my hypothetical I'm throwing out is it could be two things that she was very big on through the campaign process that she talked about a lot, and in a bill of this magnitude, there could be one thing that or two things that she both said, or one thing that she said she was for, and one thing that she said that she was against, and these were things that you considered when voting on them, and they're both opposites inside one bill, and now she has to pick one of the two, which is going to make her a liar on one or the other. Maybe not a liar, but
Sure.
it's a bad spot that she is put in by the system, I guess, is my point. It's not, I follow what you're saying, is that is the point, and that's why we ask the questions of what are you going to do about this, or how do you feel about this, and that kind of thing.
Well, and if she does a bad job in those choices, then in 2 years, either I vote for her Republican opponent, unlikely, or I support a primary opponent, someone who will do a better job from, within the Democratic Party kind of view of things, which, I generally I'm more aligned with the Democratic Party than the Republican. So, that's where
I feel like generally is a significant understatement.
Yeah.
Just and that's fine. And that's part of the, I mean, that's part of what, to me, is the further I get into it, as much as I thought I was going to get, like when I was like 25, I got into politics for a while, and I was just angry all the time about it. And there's stuff right now that I'm angry about, but it's stuff, not it's stuff and the process, but it's not, I have more appreciation for how people come at things in different viewpoints. And I think that's why I don't like either of the parties, because they kind of pigeonhole themselves. And the members and the elected officials that are in those parties, that kind of pigeonhole themselves into stuff that I think loses some of the nuance that is life, which is why even if it's not a libertarian, I'm still a third party advocate. I will, if somebody knocks on my door and says, "Hey, I'm trying to start a whatever party of Knox County," I will sign that petition. I want them all. I want that recognition.
What about ranked choice voting?
I don't know. I'm interested in it's more of a logistics concern for me, because you got to think like Georgia right now is running into that issue, which is, if I understand it correctly, I don't know. There's different versions, I guess, I've heard, and I don't quite understand the specifics, because I've heard there's I'm blanking out on the because I've heard ranked choice as far as you pick 1, 2, 3, and they get points based on where you put them. But then the runoff situation in Georgia is kind of a variation of where you minimize it to, you got to get at least 51% of the vote to get the seat, and there are two different variations.
That's how Georgia. That's my mother-in-law in the background there.
Hi, Mom.
Hi.
Grab me a beer too.
Yeah, I mean, Georgia, if you get over 50.1% or whatever, then there's no runoff. Otherwise, then the top two, like Maine has ranked choice, where ranked choice would be, say, I want the Green Party candidate, but my second choice would be Sarah Gideon rather than Susan Collins. So, when you get to the, November 3rd, all the votes are counted, and nobody's over 50, but you've got Susan Collins at 48, and you've got Sarah Gideon at 46, and then the Green Party, and then whoever's lowest, you throw them out. All of their second choices are allocated. Okay. And then if someone goes over 50, you've got a winner. Or then, the next lowest one goes out until somebody goes over 50%. And that way, I mean, I think for your purposes, have a Libertarian Party in Tennessee,
right? Because I would argue that if
Libertarian, then Republican, and then if Libertarian comes in third or fourth, your second vote will get counted for Donald Trump or whatever Republican or whoever your second choice would be. And the same. There are a lot of people who would want to vote Green Party in Tennessee and have the Democrat as their second choice.
Right, or you'd have because I'd like to. I might need to have to go look up Maine numbers and just kind of see some history on how it happens, because you could have a 5 parties on ticket, and 1, 2, 3 nobody gets over 50%, but they knock off 5, and all of the number 2s for 5 go to 3, and 3 jumps from 3 to 1. Because I think that would be advantageous for third parties, because I think like this year in the presidential, if the presidential was that way, you would have I think you would have a strong case for everybody's number 2 being Joe Jorgensen. I don't want to blank down on that, because I would say there was a large swath of people that their number 2 would not have been the opposite, whichever Trump or Biden would have been. Yeah. And so it'd have been interesting to see how that would have played out, I guess. Yeah, because I don't think the math. I don't know exactly how I don't remember the full numbers on how the math came out. But then again, you don't have a third. You didn't really. No offense to Joe Jorgensen, but she didn't really show up as a good third party anyway. I think
Or
they,
the Green Party was pretty
yeah,
weak this year.
I
Too.
think 1.5% of the total vote or something like that is what Jorgensen
Yeah,
polled.
it was really
Is
low.
pretty abysmal,
Mhm.
good considering how well Gary Johnson did comparatively, and he was a moron, a fun moron, but he was kind of stupid. But
Well, I mean, I think that the more you have ranked choice voting across the country, then that allows the third parties to develop not just at a local level, but more nationally. Or you don't just have a Joe Jorgensen on the presidential ticket, but then no libertarians running in state and local races. So the more it becomes, I like it. I think it's a good choice. I could see myself. I could have, with a good Green Party candidate, I might have gone Green and then Joe, for instance, this year if
right,
there were ranked choice voting. I would never have put Donald Trump on there, obviously, but I could have. Joe was not my first choice.
right.
But between the two of them, it is a no-brainer for me.
See, that's
So you
right.
get the third or a fourth party in there, and I think it gives. I'm all about choice. Give people
Right,
choice.
because I think it broadens the ideas, that we don't get stuck with whatever the idea is, yes or no, which is what it feels like. Again, kind of going into the gridlock thing, it feels like it's a couple different people. Not Virginia. Jane George came in here. When she was in here, she was talking about something that was presented, but it was presented by a Democrat, so the supermajority in Nashville said no. And at least in Jane's opinion, that was only because it was presented by a Democrat. And whether that's true or not is unimportant, because it is true in some level somewhere that happens. And it's like, well, they did it, so no. A little bit like you and Randy. But
or Mitch McConnell in the Senate will say, I don't want to give the Democrats any win.
Right.
So no matter whether we might otherwise like this bill, we're not going to pass it.
Right. And that to me is the number one reason we need more better voices. We just need more better voices, because then there's it's because I always joke, it's like as the argumentative libertarian, I'm always wrong to both parties. Because I have Matt. If I have Matt and Randy in here, Randy says Matt's wrong, Matt says Randy's wrong. I say anything, they both say I'm wrong.
Well, okay.
It's an illustration. It's not accurate. It's not 100% accurate.
I think there's a Venn diagram where libertarian, intersects with both the Democratic and Republican Party on certain issues.
I do. I think so too. And it's one of those, AC and I argue about it all the time, because he always is like, well, libertarians are just kind of half Republicans. They just take from the Republican side. It's like, it's not true. There's a lot of policy stuff that's much more, especially on the social side of things, that libertarians are way more on the Democratic side of the conversation. But I don't know, to I guess to close out, like, I'm excited for 21. I think there's going to be a lot of activity. I'm hoping to put out more episodes a week instead of doing the 1 or 2 a week. I'm hoping to get 3 or 4 a week, and to get a little deeper into some specific issues. I'm working on a school board issue, and I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with it. I had the assistant school the assistant school board director
Finance?
on. Say again.
The finance. I would be very interested in a podcast about.
I had him. I have an interview. It's in the bag. It's sitting here in my computer. And it's just like, it's a very nuts and bolts interview, and it's not. I'm not trying to turn it into a story, but it's not. It's me, so there's no like start to finish. It's not like there's no direction to it. It's just like, well, what about this? What about that? And there were some things, like I was at, like, one of the things to me, and I don't know how you feel on it. It's like, I want local schools to handle themselves. I don't like state and federal pushings into the school board. I mean, I understand the state has to, because the state technically handles all the money. That's one of the things I'm so confused about. When we talk about the funding of the school board, and the way Knox County does that, it all still goes to the state and then comes back, and then the state revotes and changes the way, and kind of stuff like that. It's like, can we, like, because if I understand correctly, is that the 5 major counties in Tennessee get the least amount of money per kid from the state, regardless of how much is collected in that county. And I get it, because we have more internal tax revenue that we can make up for shortfalls that the state's not sending us. But it's like, well, a kid in Monroe County is worth more to the state than a kid in Knox County.
Socialism, man.
It's weird to me. I'm not going to say.
I would love I would love a podcast that dove into how that financing goes, because I just don't understand
It's
it.
crazy.
And,
Well, Virginia, did you listen to the Virginia Bab episode?
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because she handed me like this 25-page stack of stuff, and the last page on it was the most telling to me, is that it's a breakdown. It's not all the schools in Knox County, but most of the schools in Knox County and their per student expenditure. And I'm still confused, and I need to get the actual reference data to cross check. But it's like, my kids are here at Rocky Hill, and I think it's over here somewhere, but I'm not gonna pull it out. But I want to say the state average is $10,000 a kid. My kids get about $7,500 per kid at Rocky Hill, and so it's an inverse kind of thing. The more affluent the school district, the less state money they get, and I get it. It makes sense to me, but at the same time, it's like you're depending on the parents to pitch in to make up so that you can send it elsewhere. And yes, we can argue about what elsewhere means, but that's I mean, to me, it involves questions. The voucher thing's the other thing. If we want to come off of this one, because I'm not prepared to talk about that kind of school board stuff very well, because I'm still trying to understand it. I'm so confused on exactly, because it's a combination of local, state, and federal monies, and then there's grant money that comes in, and like the math on it. And that's all I was trying to get to. And I had him for a solid hour, and I don't understand the math. And it's like, well, if I spend $10 in Knox County, that's $1 in sales tax. That goes to Nashville. How much of it comes back into the schools? It's like, well, some of this, some of that. If it's Knox County, this much comes back, but other counties get this much more and this much. And then it's like, it was really like that to me. That concerns me, because there's room for gray. There's too much room for gray and other things happening, that it's just that's how money just kind of evaporates into the sky. And that some, like we do here in Knox County, is the random golf carts disappear into somebody's yard for a couple months because somebody broke their leg or whatever.
Right. Is that yours or mine?
That's mine. He's saying hello. I don't know what he's barking at, but anyway, the voucher thing is another one that I am very interested in. I'm not saying it's not a pro. Hold on a second. Chillax, bro. I'm not saying a pro or con on vouchers. I would just like to have a better understanding of it, because again, to me, I like the idea of that direct accountability from the school to me as the parent, instead of having, I can have as big a problem as I want to with my teachers and my principals. At the end of the day, I can't afford a choice. I have to deal with it, and so I'm interested in it. I'm not sure I like the plan as it's been discussed currently, but it is something that I would be willing to entertain.
Yeah, I'm anti-voucher as I understand it, but I'm open to hearing an argument. But everything I know about it says it undermines public school funding, and which is a bad thing. So
right, it sounds to me like at least the one that's currently been in discussion. It sounds to me like what it's going to end up doing is people that already put their kids in private school or just get a discount. Is really what it sounds like. They're just going to get a state-funded discount on their already private school. That it's not going to help people that can't already afford private school get their kids in private school. That's what it sounds like to me on the current one.
Right. Well, I would be against that.
Right, and I'm not a big fan of that either. But
put your kids in private school, and if you can afford it, then God bless you. But I don't think that any money should be diverted from what needs to go to public schools in order to pay for that.
Right. Or it's an interesting market question. That's the only thing that's the only thing that keeps it open to me, is do other options become available, other versions of private schools that is not what we're used to. As far as somewhere in the middle there, that maybe a little bit more than the voucher is, but has better outcomes than the public school system does, but isn't nearly as expensive as the private school system. And we don't know that because we've never really had an opportunity to try it. And so that's the only thing that gives me any hope that it could have value, because what it should be for the most part, if the schools are doing well, is that it should just go right back into the school because we keep sending our kids there. It's just the amount of people that already send their kids to private school that are basically getting a freebie. But I don't know how you legislate that part out, because that's going to happen no matter how you do it.
Well, and considering the governor, who is, I think, tries too much to include religion in his governing. Uh, I also see it as a benefit for religiously based schools, and I have a problem with that as well.
I You have to explain more. I'm
Well, I think, while the voucher might be worded in a way that it would apply to any private school, most of the private schools are based, are Catholic or Christian or what have you, in which case it's a backdoor way of giving taxpayer money to religious schools. And I just don't think that taxpayer money should go there.
okay. I follow your logic on that for sure. I'm just trying to think of if a what's the goal. I mean, what's the goal as a parent with your kids as far as schools go?
Um, I don't know. Lots of different goals: education, socialization.
Okay, and so again, I like to be argumentative. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just trying to. What first kind of clicked in my head when you were saying that, it's like, well, if I in my household am either for that religion anyway, or I'm comfortable with my kids being taught in a way that includes that, and I like, this is kind of how I actually am. Is like my kids can make up their own mind about how they feel and what they believe and all that kind of stuff as they grow and learn about it and stuff like that. Is, I mean, I take it. I don't know. Does I guess the question being, I guess the first question would be, is currently I mean, no schools pay taxes. Even if they're a private school, does a private school pay taxes as a business?
I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, that would be the only thing that I would be, if they're not paying taxes, which they wouldn't, because Knox County Schools doesn't pay taxes either. That'd be the only thing that I would see as an issue with that. If I am comfortable, I don't know. I get what you're saying. I'm just trying to figure. I'm trying to figure out how to word what I'm trying to think. What I'm thinking about here is that I don't see if education and socialization, which both those things are capable in a Catholic school, for example, as they are in a public school. There is a specific subset of socialization that I guess would happen in a Catholic school that doesn't in a public school. But I don't know if the goal is the education and the better outcomes for the student. If a Catholic school that has assistance and scholarship programs and other stuff that comes from their congregation or something like that, I would see that as a bonus more than a negative, I suppose. So they could have.
I think the argument against the vouchers for public money going to private schools works without adding the religious component to it. I just think when it's taxpayer money, it's coming from the state, and the state is giving money to what, honestly has got to be mostly Christian schools. Are there Muslim-based schools or Jewish or any other religion? So,
fair question, yeah.
I don't know to the extent, and I'm not going to pretend to be a constitutional scholar, that the First Amendment would apply to Tennessee, but
But so
you're favoring Christians over,
I think that's I think that's a little bit leading of an assumption, but I get where you're going like that. But at the same time, it's like, if you have how many contracts does Knox County do with trash pickup? I'm sure with a little bit of research and time, I could find companies in the state of Tennessee that have contracts for some service that they're doing for the state of Tennessee that have a religious basis to them. Maybe their direct activity isn't religion, but you have somewhere around here, it's like God's First Security Service. They do security systems or something like that. So they get a contract with Knox County to put in, or should they be void from getting a contract from Knox County because they have a Christian basis? If Knox County needed a new security system put in the city county building or whatever?
Well, no, I think kind of the opposite, in that you should not exclude, a security service that happens to be run by devout Christians from being able to bid, as long as you are making that decision based on everything except for the religious part of it, then if they give you the best contract, you go with the best contract, regardless of the religion.
Right. So I use that example to say that, you know, you and I both agree that we don't know if there's a Jewish school of Knoxville. Like, there might be. There's a Muslim school in Knoxville or something like that that isn't actually just a church and has maybe daycare or something like that. But what would stop a Muslim organization from starting their own school in a program where the state was pitching in the funding to help them get more students where they can't afford it through their direct congregation?
Well, but I don't think the state should be involved in helping a Muslim school any more than they do a Christian school. My point was, I think Billy wears his Christianity on his sleeve. I think it bleeds over into how he tries to govern. And I feel like the voucher question is a backdoor way to help religiously based, specifically Christian schools at the expense of public schools.
Well, because I mean, I follow, and I don't have data to say otherwise. He hasn't told me that that's not what he's doing, so I can't say that that's not his intent. But, you know, I mean, I guess to me is that I would think that the market would react to it in a way, because I make the joke all the time. You give me 20 kids at 10 grand a kid, I can get them through the required material for a year. I could hire 2 teachers and, you know, rent a nice small building and all the other little things. And I know it's way more complicated than that, but, you know, I think the market could react to that if the system was in place, regardless of a religious background or not. And yes, there would be some that would benefit from it that already exist, and the new players would have maybe a little bit bigger of a hurdle to get over to get into place, get a facility, get the teachers they need and stuff like that. But I don't know. That's my stance on vouchers in general. I feel like the way the system is now makes it prohibitively expensive to go the private school option for individuals, and therefore, if you don't have the money, you have to deal with what you're given. And you know, and again, one of the things, and the only reason I joke about maybe going into the school board and running for school board, is I want to understand the finance. I don't understand a $600 million budget and what we get for it. It may be good.
To me, yeah. The answer is to make the public schools better, not to make it easier for private schools to eat into the population that would otherwise go to public schools.
See, but I'm a proponent that competition makes better, not just more money. You know, needing to do better to keep your students so that you can keep your funding seems like a good incentive to me. In any aspect, I mean, this student specifically, but you know, that's any normal run of the mill business. It's you got to do better, you got to do it cheaper. There's got to be something special about your version of it, or the next guy that does it's going to get all the sales. And I don't. To me, I feel like it could apply. I don't know that it will or does, but I feel like it could apply where the pressures aren't the same when it's automatic, and that's my concern with the status quo, for lack of a better word.
Well, I probably would disagree with you on pure market capitalism as it's practiced in the United States, as you described it. But I think that's not the place.
Well, yeah, we suck at capitalism in the United States.
For public education to be thrown into that arena.
Well, I don't know how I feel about it. That's where my mind goes. I would like to have a stronger specific argument on it, but it's like I feel like there's opportunity there. I just don't know how to research and articulate it well enough that it would make sense, because it's a more philosophical conversation in the what is my motivation as a teacher to do good work, which a lot of teachers, that's just there because that's why they're teachers, because it's surely not money, you know.
Yeah.
So
sure.
To try, because again, one of the things that I've come to the conclusion of, period, is that especially when the government's involved, it's all about incentives. It's incentivizing the game properly, whatever the game is, whether it's education or the prison systems or policing or whatever. It's the right incentives for the people doing the job to get it done in the public best interest. And I think that's one of the things that the government has failed at and has succeeded at in some things as well. We're big fans of the TWRA. You know, they understand their incentive is to keep the wildlife management and stuff like that in a good place for hunters to use it and all the different stuff that goes on with that. And they excel at doing so because it's a clear path. And I think a lot of things have gotten so convoluted over time that the incentive structure gets a little wonky. And then we get weird things where you have tenure and an unfireable teacher or whatever it is. But I don't know. I've rambled. I didn't mean to keep you 2 hours.
Yeah, well, that was pretty long. There's dinner waiting for me downstairs.
Well, I'm sorry. You could have cut me off.
That's okay.
I would have been mad. I would have been mad at anything less than like 57 minutes. But
okay.
Well, Todd, I appreciate you. I'll have you back on. I look forward to arguing with you more on the internet, even though you're trying to quit. Maybe that's what I'll do. Every time I see you getting in arguments on Facebook, I'll just chime in and be like, "Hey, you're quitting."
Okay.
All right. Well, Todd,
hey,
go ahead.
My wish for, I wanted to mention this earlier, my wish for 2021, because I'm not going to make a resolution here publicly, but my wish is that Glenn Jacobs primaries Bill Lee so we can get rid of at least one of them.
All right. That's a good positive spin on what you're getting at there. I get what you're doing. All right. I'm excited to my bucket list for this year, at least as those people are concerned. I want to get Glenn on the show. I'd like to talk to him and test my libertarianism against his and see how it goes. But I just really like I'm very curious like how he feels like he's doing. Like I'm curious what he thinks of the job. And not I would try not to go. I'm not going to go into it as a negative way, other than the general libertarian negative way with the government. But I'd like to see. I'd love to have his his mini biography of the last year, in his words.
Yeah.
Because I can't imagine that you're feeling great about how this year's gone. For anybody, I mean for anybody in his position, and it's not specific to him. I would say that India's probably got the same kind of situation, but I would like to. I'd be curious to hear that. But I'll have
to
get
Larson J.
I need to get him. I need to reach out to a couple more of the commissioners and reach back out to some of the ones we've already had on and learn more about this baseball stadium. I think that's the most. What's the word I'm looking for here? It's the most palatable. It's the most agreeable. Like it's stuff that's more interesting to talk about than some of the other nuts and bolts that go on behind the scenes, and maybe catch some other little tidbits of joy in the process. But I'm going to do an outro, and I'm going to say thank you. If you would like to promote yourself in any way, I don't know if you have anything specifically you want to, but if you want more Facebook followers to argue with,
I appreciate you having me on.
Well, Todd Frommeyer, everybody, I will have him on again. Outro music. All right, like I said, that's Todd Frommeyer. He's a neighbor. He's in District 4 with me. Very active voice on Facebook. He's into a lot of different stuff. He's one of my sources for a lot of little random tidbit knowledge that I don't get anywhere else. We are almost in agreement at gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. And like I said, we're going to make some adjustments as this goes on. Everybody's schedules kind of change, so I'm going to keep pushing and trying to get more interviews and get more stuff. The school board thing, like I said, is interesting. But we hope everybody had a great holiday season or is continuing to have a great holiday season. Be safe and have a happy new year, and we'll see you soon.